It's an absolute pleasure to follow the Honourable Member for Somerton and Frome. We've all been through either the thrill or the ordeal of our maiden speeches, and many of us will look back with different emotions of pride or affection or regret. Hers was certainly one to be proud of, and I'm sure the whole House will recognise that we have a member with great calibre when it comes to speaking in the House. She paid a very generous tribute to her immediate successor, which I'm sure many of us would want to echo. And she spoke in staunch defence of the cider industry. It's perhaps one area where I can genuinely offer my personal help for the profitability that she seeks. She set out widely a range of issues on rural matters, which to all of us who represent different parts of Somerset are extremely important. But I have to say that in placing herself in perspective with a range of well-known, accomplished predecessors in different walks of life from the part of the country that she represents, she set out a lack of self-absorption, which she will find is somewhat rare in the House of Commons, and I hope that she retains this self-effacing attitude which she brought refreshingly to the House today. And I have to say that in her description of her constituency from top to bottom, if she ever leaves this House voluntarily or involuntarily, she certainly is likely to get a place on the Somerset Tourist Board as a result of the work that she set out today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like also to thank all those who brought this bill today to the place that we now find it. And the Minister said something extremely important to my constituency during her speech today when she referred to local plans, because she said it's not just the assessed housing need that matters, but how much of that need can be accommodated in any one area. And that matters hugely to a number of us. And if I take North Somerset as an example, 40% of North Somerset is green belt, 30% is floodplain, 12% is area of outstanding natural beauty. And one of the reasons that we are so delighted that the government is abolishing the national housing targets is you cannot apply them equally to areas where there is a lot of land that can be built upon and constituencies where there are natural constraints, and constraints actually imposed by government that say you can't build on green belt and you can't build on floodplain. So this makes a lot of sense to hand the power back to local areas to make decisions for themselves. And the removal of the 5-year land bank is also a very important increase in the freedom for local authorities. I'm delighted that the government put the protection all through the passage of this bill through the other place, the protection of the green belt at the centre of what it was doing to stop urban sprawl, which of course we face potentially in North Somerset being so close to Bristol, to protect our environment, as has been mentioned on a number of different issues today, and to stop inappropriate development. And this, of course, is likely to become an important election issue as we go forward, given that the Labour Party have said that they will build on Greenbelt, and the Liberal Democrats have said they will reintroduce national house building target numbers if they are able to do so. Now, the Minister, first, can I echo what a number of my colleagues have said about encouraging nature recovery strategies and the amendments that have been brought forward to the bill, and also the issue of banking hubs, which have been raised on a number of occasions. It is very, very important that, particularly in rural areas, in small towns, and particularly for the elderly, those who are not necessarily computer literate, and those who find it difficult to travel, that we maintain some form of connection with traditional banking. And I fully accept the Minister's argument that these are market decisions to be taken by individual banks. But what we cannot have are banking deserts being created where our constituents need to get access. I'll go over to one more.
Just very briefly, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that we often think about banking hubs and think of rural communities, but your point about banking deserts is equally important to constituencies such as mine, where we now have only one bank left in the whole of the constituency, and some of the banking sector think it's fine to actually just drive into Walsall or Sutton. It's not.
My right honourable friend makes a very important point, and therefore it is incumbent upon us all to ensure that we work with government and with the banking sector to ensure that we have access for our constituents she makes a very good point. It was something that was more pertinent previously to rural issues. Then it was smaller villages, then it was smaller towns. Now even larger towns are finding the situation that she describes as being one that they face. So it is a point well made. I have 2 points that I wish to make to the Minister, one of which I raised during an intervention, which is when will we see the new NPPF? She indicated that we will see it as soon as we get royal assent. That, for me, Madam Deputy Speaker, means that I hope that by the time we get to prorogation, which will not be very far away from us, we will see that new NPPF, and I'm sure that we'll all hold the Minister to account for the very welcome timeline that she placed on that today. But I have one issue that I would like, above all else, for her to consider, and I hope that we can get a reply during the debate today, and that is that there will be a hiatus between the passage of this legislation and any implementation date for the legislation, and there will of course still be requests coming forward for planning permission on housing developments. Will the Minister make it very clear that any planning inspector need to take into account the legislation that we are passing now rather than the previous NPPF when looking at these planning applications? Because it would be quite wrong and I think profoundly undemocratic if this House, both Houses, produce legislation along the lines that the government has proposed, but planning inspectors were to apply an older version of the NPPF, thereby allowing the possibility that planning applications were put in place that are against the clearly expressed will of Parliament. We cannot have unelected inspectors making decisions against what this Parliament itself has clearly decided. And I hope that the Minister will give an assurance in her wind-up tonight that instructions will be given to the Planning Inspectorate that should there be any planning applications in that hiatus, that they will be expected to follow what the government has set out in this legislation.